Welcome to the Fashion Shed. My name's Chris. I'm a freelance Clo3D designer. Today we'll be looking at how I made this transparent tote bag for one of my clients. If you want this file, you can download it from my Connect store. Just hit the link in the description and you can head over there and just download it for complete free. There's tons of other free stuff. A few bits of paid things, the more complex stuff, a load of denim, all that. So head over there. Okay, so this is what the client sent me. Just all the different angles. Sometimes you only just get front, but this guy sent me all the different angles so I can really see the details, and they're very good photos. And also the measurements. That was so helpful. Normally you have to import it into Illustrator and kind of guess what the measurements are, but I've got the exact measurements here, so that's perfect. So the first thing I do is I go into Clo, I create all of the different panels. So you've got the side panel, the base panel, that's the top panel. We'll be changing that later on, but just so we can create the basic shape, we add that now. Make sure that all the details are added. The bevel on that bottom edge is really important. One thing I did realize that I had to redo the front and back panel because those measurements were off by a couple of millimeters, and that, if you don't correct that, you'll be stuck later on. It won't fit right and it will gather and it will look horrible. So making sure it's absolutely millimeter perfect at this stage is crucial. Okay, so once you've got all the panels, you start placing them into position. Like, just kind of get them roughly into position. I freeze the bottom, the base panel for now, and then put all of the other panels in place. With bags, there's a lot of freezing, strengthening, because if you don't have one panel frozen at any time, the bag just falls and flops to the ground, or if you've got pressure on there, it flies off into oblivion. So okay, so what I've done there is, when I sewed it all together, the joins were at a different angle. So what I had to do was I had to put everything to 90 degrees. So I just selected all of the stitching, but then what that did was that bevel, it kind of pulled it into the corner, so it got rid of the bevel. It took me a while to figure out that the horizontal seams at the bottom for the base, they needed to be 180 degrees, not 90 degrees. So as soon as I hit that to 180, it just clicked back into place. That's absolutely spot on. Okay, it's bulging out a little bit. I corrected that by the weight of the bag. So rather than having the weight as 30, I changed it to 0 just so it wasn't slumping down so much, and that seemed to fix that. That's looking good. So that's the basic block. Everything's strengthened. The base is still frozen. Okay, so what I'm doing now is there is I think 7 to 8 millimeter binding on the outside edge that goes round. So what I've done is I've created that panel, added it to the edge. I didn't like how it was so straight, so again I changed the angle of the sewing line and kind of forced it to kind of branch out a little bit. You can see there that it's quite thick, this panel. You can simply just select the panel and change the thickness, and it makes it look like this chunky binding or bound edge. It's so much easier to play with thicknesses rather than creating, I don't know, a double layer with a fold that would be far too, there just wouldn't be enough pixels within the particle distance, just wouldn't be low enough to do that detail at this scale. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so next thing I'm doing is the internal bound seams on the base. So I create some panels, put it inside the bag. I've made the bag a little bit transparent just so I can see. So there they are. That's the thing of making a transparent bag. You need to make sure that absolutely every detail is made. It's like a lot of the times when you're creating something, you can completely ignore the internal details, but for a transparent bag, you can't get away with that. I even sewed down those edges just because I didn't want those poking out. So that's that. Okay, so the top edge binding, I simply cut into the panels rather than creating additional panels. I cut into them and then just raised the thickness of them up so it matches the binding that goes around the edge. Okay, so I wanted there to be a bit of a sag to this, so at this stage I had to get rid of that top panel, because if you can see the side panels, they kind of push out and push down a little bit, and that's crucial for the zip actually, because the zip carries on to the outside of the bag, so you need one side to go down a little bit. So I'm just playing around with this, pushing it out. I realised that that wasn't strengthened, that bit, so it looked a bit saggy, a bit too saggy, should I say. Okay, so now what I'm doing is there's two panels within the top of the bag that doesn't go right to the edge, that attaches to the center zip. At this stage, I'm not going to add a zip. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a 1 centimeter wide panel. This will be clear in a bit, but it's basically so I can build the binding and the edge holder, zip holder. Because if you just put the zip in now, it would be very difficult. I don't even know how I would go about creating that binding on the edge. So at the moment it's just simply a panel. You need to sort out the folds and the angles of the folds at this stage, just so it hangs correctly and it doesn't affect the outside of the bag too much. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, I forgot to actually move the reference image over, but there's a bit of a zip, there it is, that goes over the edge, just like that. That's just so that when you open the bag, you would take it all the way to the end of that, and you can actually open it fully. If you didn't have that bit, the bag would only open a little bit. You could only get little fingers in there. So it's to make sure that you can open the bag fully. So this is the binding on the edge of the zip. Quite fiddly, this bit, because I want to join those bits up. I have to cut them off and join them together so it's one continuous. Everything was flipped the wrong way here, so I had to rotate them and then join them or merge them. I think I had to rotate that one as well. Okay. I think I changed the weight of this bit, because at the moment the zip's just kind of poking up. So what you need to do is you need to change the weight of that material. I think I changed the weight of this panel, so it just pulled it down. Rather than doing a kind of a complex fold I just did a single panel here and just changed the thickness. I think it's enough to convince you that that is a folded over piece. So you delete that panel now, and now you've got that binding, so you can just add the zip onto it. Like that. There you go. Add in the metal teeth. Put this the wrong way around, so I have to flip it again. It starts at the other end. There you go. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Change the thickness a little bit. Super. Okay, so now we're going to work out the straps. Now there wasn't any measurements on this, but I kind of guessed based on the measurement of the bag that the straps were 40 centimeters wide and the distance from the edge to the strap was 50. And it looks pretty spot on. Okay, so what I've done there is, rather than creating additional panels, what I've done is I've drawn on top of the side panels and then I've duplicated that over. So then those straps are already on that panel. There's no moving or rendering that you have to do. I've already added the cross stitch so that when you cut and sew them, that those bits are already sewn. I'm stitching on the side bits. That's great. That's the quickest way of doing that bit. Okay, so now I need to do the handle. So I elongated those panels so they go straight up, and then I add a shape. So add a cylinder, put it right in the middle, and it stops those straps from falling down. Later on, you can hide that cylinder, but it can stay there, but it's invisible basically. Had a little trouble turning those straps over because I wanted them to go in the same direction. Okay, so move them into the middle. You can play with like the height of that cylinder as well, so you can, if you need the straps longer or shorter, you can, or tighter or whatever. I'm just trying to get it as close to the reference image as possible. Okay, at this point I'm trying to stitch the top bits for the handle. I had to detach these parts and then create the folds. There we are. Pulled them in a little bit. A lot of tweaking on this bit. You can see I'm just playing around with where the cylinder is, the height, the length of the bags, and how that cylinder interacts with that strap. There you go, and you can make it invisible, and that's it. I could go more in depth into like what buttons I'm pressing and things like that, but I'm guessing a lot of you guys have played with this software a lot, so you kind of know what buttons to press, and a lot of you aren't absolute beginners, so there's no point in me telling you exactly what buttons to press. You kind of get it. It's more about the process. Okay, so I thought I was done, but then I realized that there's a little D-ring here that needs to go on to the edge. I actually played with the weft percentage here, so when I try and attach it to this point, it goes all funny. So what I do instead is I create an additional little platform, a little square, this square here, add it in, freeze that, and then I add the little lever tab onto it just so I can construct the little loop, and then I get rid of that square and then I can attach it where I want it to. D-rings, I personally prefer to make my own. You can do this just by simply making the shape and then changing the thickness, because then you can get exactly the shape you want. I could go into the Clo3D store and download a D-ring, but they're either too thick or too thin, and yeah, it's just a hassle. So this was a much quicker way of doing it, and just change the material to a metal and it looks perfect. I think the particle distance for those, I took it down to like a 2, just so it hasn't got sharp edges. Okay, so I'm just doing all the stitch work now. Pretty simple. I think there's like edge stitching on the majority of things. Yeah. Again, the measurements from the edge. I work in millimeters and Clo is in inches, so I have to play around with that quite a lot. Okay, so here's the materials. So in terms of the transparency, I did you'll have to download the file and have a look at exactly the settings that I used. But I used I just changed the opacity all the way down and then up the metallic, and then it created this really shiny, nice material. And here it is. I hope you like it. I'm pretty pleased with it. Like I said, if you want to download it for free, go onto my Connect store and have a look. Tons of other stuff there for free. Add a few likes, all the rest. And if you've got any suggestions for my next stuff, then just let me know. This was Jose suggested this, so this is for you, mate. Cheers, man. Bye.